Thank you for joining us. This is Peninsula 24.
Last week, Korea and Japan finally signed GSOMIA, the General Security of Military Information Agreement, to better deal with the escalating North Korean nuclear threats. Different arguments have risen over the military intelligence sharing pact between the two countries, which was signed only a month after the two countries resumed negotiations. On today's Peninsula 24, we discuss the rising controversies over the intelligence sharing pact between Korea and Japan, its impact on Northeast Asian security, as well as necessary diplomatic and security strategies needed for Korea.
For today's discussion, we are joined by Dr. Kim Chang-soo from Korea Institute for Defense Analyses.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me this evening for this program. Thank you.
And Dr. Myon-woo from the Sejong Institute.
Thank you.
And Professor Kim Jae-chun from Sogang University.
It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here today. Dr. Kim, Korea and Japan officially signed the General Security of Military Information Agreement, GSOMIA, last week. Please elaborate on the GSOMIA first. What exactly is it, and what's the major significance of the signing of the military pact?
Okay, GSOMIA, which GSOMIA stands for General Security of Military Information Agreements. This is a basic framework between 2 or 3 parties that they're going to exchange some military information, and they're going to use them, and also they're going to manage all these information shared between the parties. So this is a kind of protocol, that kind of framework under which they believe, trust each other, and we are willing to exchange our programs, information, and military information so that we can broaden our military intelligence or other military operation as well. South Korea has concluded GSOMIA with 33 countries and plus 1 international organization, that is the NATO. And we, out of these 33, we have also agreements and also arrangements. So altogether, it's a kind of, we call it GSOMIA. But with Japan, it was an agreement, General Security of Military Information Agreements with between Japan and Korea. And this is, as I told you, with signing this program, this agreement, that for the first time, Japan and Korea has determined to exchange our military-related information between the parties, not bypassing the other party like the United States, just direct bilateral information change between Japan and Korea. And we are going to maximize the utility of this shared information between our parties. So that is very important, and this is why we call it maybe the first step toward much more advanced military defense cooperation between Japan and Korea.
Korea and Japan previously sought to enact GSOMIA in 2012.
Yes.
However, the arrangement was abandoned only by an hour before the scheduled signing. What was the reason for the failure of the implementation of the GSOMIA deal back then?
I think I can think of 2 things or 2 reasons. First, the opponents of that agreement at that time of 2012 argued that there was a kind of a procedure flaw that no one knew, or it was not known that the GSOMIA will be placed on that cabinet discussion agenda. So it's against the kind of a procedure to do that. And another thing that I can think of is that at that time, the comfort woman issue and that Dokdo issue has been a very hard issue between 2 countries. And as you may all know that in Korea, it is very risky issue, anyone to touch upon. So, I mean, mingle with that, let's say, conflict between 2 countries, that this issue has been, in a sense, secretly or not known, that it will be placed on the cabinet, let's say, agenda. So there was many suspicions that it is a kind of a secret deal and behind the since, and all that kind of suspicions and all that. So the criticism has been quite rising. So probably that the government at that time was so feel much burdensome, and so they kind of canceled that signing just before. I think less than an hour. Some says that just about 15 minutes before the scheduled timing. Yeah, I think that's probably the reasons at that time.
Korea-Japan talks on GSOMIA deal, which was resumed after a 4-year hiatus, was officially signed only about a month after the resumption of the negotiations. Why do you think the government has promoted the signing of an intelligence sharing pact in a hurry? And why were the negotiations resumed at this point?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. From purely militaristic point of view, as Dr. Kim already explained very well, it is the right thing to do to better deal with ever-increasing North Korea's nuclear and weapons and missiles capability. To what extent it's going to help us is a little bit debatable. How much it's going to help us is, I think it's a little bit controversial, but I think there is a very little doubt that by signing this deal with Japan, generally speaking, our preparedness will be enhanced to a great extent.
Dr. Kim, Seoul and Tokyo have shared the military intelligence indirectly through Washington.
That's right.
Under the Trilateral Intelligence Sharing Pact signed in 2014. However, according to the Ministry of National Defense of Korea, such an indirect approach has had a lot of limitations so far. What is your take on this?
Okay, as you point out, we actually signed what we call the TISA, T-I-S-A, Trilateral Intelligence Sharing Arrangements between the United States and Japan and Korea. That was December 2014. As a kind of replacement for a GSOMIA, which we actually intended to sign between Japan and Tokyo and Seoul 2 years earlier, because we didn't make it that time. So the United States instead gave an alternative. Why don't you sign this kind of trilateral agreements between the United States, Japan, and Korea, because we are the allies, United States, Japan, and Korea. That's why we signed the TISA back then. But now, particularly with increasing North Korean nuclear missile threats, in January, the 4th nuclear test, and on the 9th of September this year, rather, the 5th nuclear test, and also 23 missile tests. So all this is very particular, and this is the biggest in quantity by any other year. So that's why we really see an emerging, very imminent need to sign a document. But one thing I should stress here, and this is not made hurriedly, as a matter of fact. We've worked on this for the last 10 or 15 years. Actually, we have to go back to the 1994, the first nuclear crisis, when Kim Il-sung passed away. And they were talking about all kinds of contingency in the Korean Peninsula. So this was one of the reasons. Back then, we have no trust with each other, with Japan and Korea. So we were just talking about trilateral security cooperation, how we're going to deal with if there's a North Korean contingencies. Because United States, South Korea, and Japan are really directly interested if there is any contingency on the Korean Peninsula, which is North Korea. So as a matter of fact, this is not something done overnight. It actually has to go back to like almost 20 years, but it took such a long time because there was a lack of trust between two U.S. allies, which is South Korea and Japan. So that's why we've taken a very gradual step to educate people, to let the politicians understand why we have to sign this very important military information, general information, GSOMIA with Japan, because this is as a kind of enhance our capability to deter any North Korean security threat. Nothing else. Just how we are going to enhance our deterrence capability vis-a-vis North Korea. So that's why we finally signed this GSOMIA last week. But actually, we made a preparation over the last several years. But to be precisely, we have to go back to like 20 years, almost 20 years, when North Korea was about on the brink of contingencies. and Japan actually signed a kind of a law which called Shuhonjitaho. It's a kind of law regarding the situations in areas surrounding Japan. This is a very famous law passed in Japan. So that was almost like 17 years old now. So this is a very long history.
Dr. Lee, the Defense Ministry have emphasized that the military intelligence sharing deal will ensure the accuracy and diversity of all the information of North Korean nuclear development. And it will also contribute to strengthening the defense capability against the missile and nuclear threat from the north as well. Then what kind of military information can you actually get from Japan, and what would be the major contents of the information?
Core of the information that we would get from this agreement would be that the information about that, let's say, missile launch or that kind of things. And as well known, the means of gathering information between Korea, I mean the ROK or South Korea, and Japan is a little different. As well known, the Korea's, let's say, means of information gathering is so-called that the human intelligence, and some of the other military means. But mainly, it is known that from or by that human. On the other hand, Japan's means of gathering information is through much more, let's say, various. That is to say, through the satellites or the radar on the sea and on the land. So I should say that Japanese information about North Korea or North Korea's development or movements of missiles and other things could be more, let's say, accurate, and there could be a variety of the information. So in that sense, and you mentioned about the accuracy of these missile-related issues. So more information would give us to more accuracy in a sense, since there will be more information to analyze what is really going on. So in that sense, I think we can think of the reason why we need this the agreement. Of course, that Japan also need this kind of information. Even though with their high, let's say, technology, they need to see the right timing, or that there is a kind of limitation that since Japan is a little apart from that Korean Peninsula, so they have some lag of time that when exactly that missile launched, that kind of thing. So they need to have our or Korean, South Korea's cooperation or some information on that kind of things. So in a sense, both parties, that South Korea and Japan, need to cooperate on that sense too. So it is kind of, in a sense, reciprocal, I think. But second, I should mention that as Dr. Kim Chang-soo mentioned, that it is not yet known that or what kind of what level of information would be exchanged with these agreements. That is to say, as I just mentioned, even though Japan's information with a high, let's say, quality and technology would really be given with these agreements or not. So what I want to emphasize in a sense is that probably besides that balance sheet of who gets more or less, I think the critical point of this agreement would be that, as just Dr. Kim mentioned, that it is the first step to go further or kind of trust building between South Korea and Japan. As I just mentioned, that there is even though the relationship between South Korea and Japan has been a long history, and even after 1945. It is kind of, it's more than 70 years and they kind of long, but there has been conflict and let's say, lack of trust or distrust between two countries, especially on this issue of security. So I think in that sense, I think this agreement would give two countries kind of a first step for trust building in these security areas.
We have one more question that Japan has an array of advanced information gathering technologies, including the reconnaissance satellites and the 6 Aegis equipment destroyers. Then why do you think Japan wants to sign the GSOMIA deal with South Korea? And what kind of information do they actually get from South Korea?
I think Japan can gain intelligence information, specifically SIGINT information that we can collect by utilizing our satellite aircraft. And also we have a very strong human intelligence capability, because we can utilize these defectors. So what they can gain is to gain access to these intelligence information that they cannot collect, but we can, because we are geographically more proximate to North Korea. So I think this deal is complementary in nature, because we gain access to, as you said, their 14th and EMINT and SIGINT information that they collect from satellite, these reconnaissance satellites and Egypt's, Aegis naval vessels. And also, more broadly, I think what they can gain is sort of our endorsement in Korean Peninsula security affairs, their role in North Korean contingencies. I think that's going to be a huge advantage to Japan.
Okay. Now I'd like to touch upon the pending controversies surrounding the signing of Korea-Japan GSOMIA. Seoul has maintained military information sharing arrangement and agreement with 33 countries, including the US, the UK, and Russia.
Yes.
Then why have we seen such sensitive responses, especially when it comes to the deal with GSOMIA with Japan?
Yes, for this, I can also think about two things or two reasons. First one is that the other side, or the partner of this agreement, is Japan. That is to say, as I just mentioned, that the relationship between South Korea and Japan has been quite long. Even after 1945, or it's more than 70 years for now, more than 70 years, 71 years. But with that, let's say, a long history, there has been troubles or conflicts between two countries, especially on the issue of how they, let's say, see or view the past history, especially when Koreans mention about past history is about that colonial period and how to, let's say, view the damages done in that colonial period. And as you may know, and as well known, Japanese, let's say, official position is that has been, and especially under this Prime Minister Abe, is that they kind of apologized, but they had done what they have to do for that time of logic, in a sense. So in that sense, Koreans, not only as a victim of that time and by that colonialism, it is something wrong that what Korea has been experienced. So Japan should be more, let's say, apologetic in a sense, and to see what's the right thing in history. So that kind of, let's say, doubts or suspicion or distrust about that recognition of history. So there is especially not on that, let's say, expert level, but in the general public's level, there is a doubt or suspicion about Japan, about what is, let's say, right or what is wrong in a sense. So that's the first thing. And the second thing would be that it's the matter of security. So just related to the suspicion about Japan's, let's say, real motive and that kind of things, and their, I mean, Japan's history consciousness in a sense, still many doubts that it is really time to cooperate with Japan in this area of security and that kind of things. So, of course, as a let's say expert on Japan and let's say, in a sense, a security area, I do agree that this agreement is needed for both countries, especially for, I think, for Korean security. I do understand that there is a, let's say, kind of a discomfortness in a sense in that general public side to matching this agreement, I think.
Dr. Lee pointed out historical legacy between the two countries, and we also have to think of the strategic trust if we want to develop this GSOMIA deal and any other military cooperation with Japan. Probably we have to think of it and continuously in our society. And continuously, Dr. Kim, the level of military information that will be shared by the two countries is one of the critical factors of the bilateral military pact. The Ministry of National Defense of Korea has mentioned that it will be similar to a deal with sharing military information which Korea and Japan discussed in 2012. The ministry said it would not share top-level ministry secret with Japan. Then what kind of military information do you think will be shared between the two countries? And what do you think will be the extent of the limitation shared by the two countries?
The level of information exchange, how we're going to change and share information between Tokyo and Japan. From what I got from the media report, that we agreed to exchange the military information. We have a kind of different grades, beginning with a top secret and confidential. And underneath we have we call it no foreign, so the lowest, from the top to the lowest. So I understand Tokyo and Japan, Tokyo and Seoul will exchange military information and intelligence that we labeled as secret, not top secret, but secret and confidential. So in Japanese, I was told it was a boei himitsu, it's a defense secret, and underneath simply hi, which is confidential, just himitsu. So that kind of level will be, information will be shared between our two countries.
Okay. Professor Kim, some people have viewed the military intelligence sharing pact with skepticism. And they saying that Korea would not benefit from the deal. However, the Defense Ministry has said that it is an equal agreement that both countries can exchange necessary information on military affairs. What is your take on this?
My take is that, generally speaking, I think it's going to help us. It's going to be more effective. I mean, if we can receive this real-time intelligence information directly from Japan instead of going through the United States, via the United States. Sure, we have this intelligence information sharing agreement between the United States, Korea, and Japan, but there are some limitations. And some people say that our intelligence gathering capabilities have been upgraded in recent years, but I'm pretty sure that there are some weaknesses of ours that can be compensated by cooperating with Japan. And this isn't really, as Dr. Kim and Dr. Lee mentioned, this isn't really a blanket commitments that we are giving to Japan. I'm pretty sure that these exchanges of these, critical intelligence information could be conducted on reciprocal basis. We don't really have to, give our top secrets whenever they want us to give. I mean, I really don't think they will have access to our top secrets. It doesn't work that way. So the worry that the deal isn't going to be effective, I mean, it's not really a rationalist assessment that I'm worrying about. It's more of a, sometimes, public opinion can be a little bit irrational, right? So what I'm saying is that you have to address this issue directly with the people at home. And if your neighboring country has a lot of skepticisms about this, and you have to put in good faith efforts to mobilize consent from your own people at home and from your key neighboring country abroad. That's the necessity that I'd like to emphasize today. But other than that, to worry that we won't be gaining really a lot by signing this deal, the worry that Japan will gain access to our top secrets, I think that worry is a little bit overblown. That's my take.
Mm-hmm. Then, Dr.
Can I add one just more?
Sure.
Top secrets is really top secret. Only a few, just a small number of Korean
It's going to
people
be a
in the
reciprocal
military
basis. Yeah.
have access to top secret. Because I'm working for my institution, I only have access to the secret, not top secret. Only a small number of top political leaders have the access to top secret level. So top secret level cannot and should not be exchanged between our two countries.
Then, Dr. Kim, Abe administration has galvanized a lot of efforts to turn itself into a great military power. And some people said Korea-Japan GSOMIA might provide a reason to intervene the event of the emergency on the Korean Peninsula. Do you think it would become possible for the Japanese self-defense forces to enter Korean Peninsula after the signing of the GSOMIA?
Let me give you my answer first. Impossible. Impossible. We made it clear that we will not allow accept any Japanese self-defense force coming to the Korean Peninsula for under whatever reason. We should talk to each other first, and if the situation is so grave that we agree and we make a decision that it might be better in our national interest to invite the Japanese forces. Under their very strict and very limited situations, then we might allow that kind of Japanese military interference. Other than that, it's almost impossible because we are all talking about assumptions. What if there is a contingency in North Korea? Just look at that. If there's a contingency, it would have tremendous damage on not only on South Korea, but Japan and the United States. So what I really like to stress is how we're going to maintain a peace with North Korea and with some other countries. Because we have a lot of misunderstanding what Abe government is doing with this kind of legislation and all kind of signing. I understand why we have that kind of misunderstanding and worry and suspicion for good reason, basically, for historical reasons and political reasons. But we also have to be concerned what kind of negative impact it will have by not signing or sharing information between our friendly country, Japan, with all the information regarding North Korean WMD capabilities. So as I pointed out, this is very cost-effective, and it will bring a lot of synergetic effects, not only to South Korea and Japan, but also to the United States, and even to other countries in the whole world, because we really want to enhance our defense capability vis-a-vis the North Korean WMD challenges and capabilities. So my answer to you, it is almost nearly impossible for Japanese self-defense forces to join us for military operation without our written and clear consent to do that. It's almost impossible because there is a lot of I think this is kind of still a kind of Cold War mentality, and all the history mentality, and some people just call it just Cold War hangover. We are still suffering from that kind of hangover. But in reality, Japan has no intention and no capability to send its troops to the Korean Peninsula. Impossible. And United States knows that, and United States is playing a kind of certain restraining or inhibiting roles not allowing Japan to come to this peninsula if there's a contingency in the peninsula. Because we believe we, South Korea and ROC Army, can deter and defeat North Korean threats, of course, and with the support of the United States, the best ally of South Korea. So it is more than enough to deter if there is a contingency, and if North Korea comes down to attack us, we will definitely deter and defend them. We actually didn't need any third-party interference other than just information sharing, because this is a kind of additional added assets for our capability to deter North Korean threats.
Mm-hmm. The signing of Korea-Japan GSOMIA does not mean that the Japanese self-defense forces to enter the Korean
far
Peninsula.
Far from it.
And without our consent or permission.
No, impossible.
At the same time, the Japanese government, in your opinion, never intended to enter
They
into
never
the-
intend to enter.
Right. Okay.
Because we have all that kind of passing of the legislation in Japan on the new guidelines for U.S.-Japan defense cooperation. Whenever they issue this kind of new documents, we have, I think it's a legitimate concern and worry. Japan might come back militarily and do something again. But I personally don't believe history repeats itself. In the eyes of those who believe, history repeats. But I believe history just evolves. And just people just like to see, they see what they want, and they hear what they want to hear. So we have a very objective in making all kinds of assessments and enhancing our defense capability. GSOMIA is one thing, but Japanese infiltration or intervention, military particular intervention in times of contingency on the Korean Peninsula is a totally different thing. We don't have to do that.
Okay.
They are not equal. They are totally different.
All right. Dr. Lee, concerns have been raised over the Korea-Japan GSOMIA as it might heighten the tensions surrounding the Korean Peninsula. And it might be even led to an arms races in the region by stimulating North Korea to improve its military capabilities and readiness. How do you see the possibility of the signing of the military pact to aggravate the bilateral relations between the two Koreas?
As far as I know, that North Korea already kind of mentioned that or criticized about this agreement, that South Korea has been not only United States puppet, but it again that Japan's puppet too. So in that sense, I mean, their, let's say, criticism has been just of the same kind, I think. And I think I forgot to mention about with the previous question that one of the key probably information that Japan would give if that this agreement goes smoothly would be that North Korea has a sovereign-related information probably, and as you well known that North Korea's development of let's say SLBM, submarine launched missile, it has been quite, I mean, in a sense, very risky for Korea's, let's say, security, and not only Korea's, but in a sense, North Korea arguing that it could aim to the United States. So in that sense, it's quite far-fetched. So Japanese, let's say, naval forces or naval capability has been well known and kind of famous, and especially their P3C, which catch that the movements of the submarine has been very well known and well equipped. So in that sense, Japanese the P3C could, let's say, follow or so give us some information about the submarine. So in that sense, I think North Korea might or should feel some, let's say, some not exactly crisis, but it could, jeopardize their kind of a stance, I think, security stance. So it is probably very natural that North Korea criticize about this agreement. So in that sense, that could let's say, lead to some conflicts between two Koreas. But for that question, I think we should ask first that it is North Korea that, who is the kind of, generating these conflicts and the threats on the peninsula. I think it is North Korea that developing nuclear weapons and related missile capabilities. So
Then, Professor Kim, there's been the outlook that the two countries might start negotiation on acquisition and cross-servicing agreement, ACSA, after the signing of GSOMIA. ACSA has been considered as a standard that shows the level of military cooperation between the countries. What exactly is it, and what kind of impact will it have?
After signing GSOMIA, I think it's quite possible for both countries to move on to the discussion of signing ACSA. By signing ACSA, two countries would be able to exchange ammunition, fuel, food, and other military supplies. So this is quite natural course of action that you should take, and natural course of action that we have taken after signing GSOMIA with the United States, Great Britain, Spain, and Australia. But in my personal opinion, as with GSOMIA, there is no need to rush. My opinion, my take is that you really have to put in enough of efforts to garner enough of public consent and galvanize international support for this. By international support, I mean China's understanding. I know it's very difficult, if not impossible, but you have to go through these difficult and time-consuming procedures, and you'll have to elicit, at least a passing acquiescence on the part of mass public and China. Otherwise, there's going to be too much backlash. So my opinion is that don't rush on this issue. This is not the kind of decision that you have to make in your office. Get out of your office, get out of your comfort zone and go out and try to galvanize support. So that's my advice to the government.
Professor Kim pointed out a very critical point that the ACSA deal and the result will be possible, but we don't have to hurry to see the result. And at the same time, we have to think of the neighboring countries' concerns, especially China's concerns, and how China will respond to it, and how do we deal the China-Korea relations in the future. And yes.
For that thing, as far as I know, ACSA is exchange, let's say, exchange of the materials, since used for this military operation and that kind of things. So I think there are some limitations between, or there are many things to be done between, ACSA between Korea and Japan to be, to be done, I think. So what I want to say is that ACSA between Korea and Japan should not be confined in that Korean Peninsula wise. What I'm saying is that we have one case that in 2013 that in southern Sudan, Korean that PKO needed or lacked our kind of bullets and that kind of thing. So they asked that Japanese PKO, but somehow it's not. Fortunately, in the beginning, that Japanese PKO, even with their, let's say, difficulties, legal difficulties, since they cannot, borrow their the military things that to other, unless that there's a legal permission and that kind of thing. So they kind of, said okay, but somehow, it just, it could not be needed. But as that kind of case, I think for cooperation, for some goodwill, I mean, that there could be, some need that, we may things. So I think we may regard these things. I surely agree that Professor Kim said, saying that we need to make this we make that public know or understands that the need or that we need time to make them understand and that kind of stuff. I surely agree that, and somehow this, let's say, government is quite clumsy to make people understand what they are doing. But I think that for AXA itself, I think there is some need between not only between Korea and Japan, but for other countries, I think.
Washington has also continuously emphasized the necessity to sign the GSOMIA between the two countries. How will the U.S. benefit from the signing of the Korea-Japan GSOMIA?
I think the United States has been really proponent, strongly support the idea that two U.S. allies, Korea and South Japan, signed this GSOMIA because they believe it makes military sense. We definitely need some information about North Korean military activities, particularly WMD capabilities, because when we initiate a kind of military operation, it is very important. We have a term like C4ISR in the military, that is command and control, and communication and computer and intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance. These are the really basic important information. The basic information is very important underneath all these military activities. So this is a very basic first step to increase our capability, military capability rather. That's why this is very information, because Japan has particularly very high level advanced capabilities to monitor and detect and all kind of military facilities and military activity, particularly North Korean submarines, because Japan is pretty much well known. Their ASW, anti-submarine warfare capability, JMS has really tremendous efforts. So this is kind of idea is pretty much welcomed by the United States, because they also have some limited defense budgets, like all kind of, so that's why they really want to, I think this is really particularly true under Mr. Trump, because while they want to maintain a good alliance with with Japan and Korea, they also want South Korea. I mean, the new government administration in Washington, we really want to have much more roles and more activities by Tokyo and Japan, because again, they want to really protect their own capabilities. Because they are facing a serious military budget. So as Kim Jae-chun pointed out, we also have that serious problems. That's why I personally believe this is a very good way, very cost-effective way of enhancing our deterrence capability vis-a-vis North Korea. Otherwise, many people are arguing that we have to buy this and that kind of weapon system without considering where does the money come from. So this is a very reasonable and very rational debate we have to initiate with our public. And as is rightly pointed out, we have to really educate and we have to garner public support, which is very important for even the Minister of National Defense. Many people outside have a bit kind of biased. The Minister of National Defense is just turning a deaf ear and turning blind eyes to. No, we are very much interested in the public opinions and their reactions, because unless there's support, unless we get this kind of support from the public, we just cannot move an inch. It is very important in a country like South Korea, a democracy, all the decision making, even though it's taken much longer time than we can expect, we should get the support from the National Assembly and the people. And we have to persuade them, and if necessary, we have to educate them why we have made the decision to sign this agreement first. And maybe, as you pointed out, AXA is pretty much related to each other, even though it's not a package deal. It's Dr. Myon made a very good important point, because this sharing ammos, fuels, and foods, and all kind of other provisions are very important, and like South Sudan or UNPK activities. But I don't see that kind of situation happening in close to Korean Peninsula, because South Korean government, our military has a very high level of preparedness, food, ammos, everything. So it is not like a Sudan case. It's a very South Sudan case. It's very difficult. So I think the United States will really welcome this idea because they have been long proponent of signing this GSOMIA, because we also propose this idea to China as well. China actually, for various reasons, as you can imagine, they rejected our offer. But if there is a continuing North Korean threats, and if North Korea does not hear what Beijing wants to say to them, then they might consider, okay, signing South Korea is not such a bad idea. As I pointed out, as a matter of fact, I met one of the very renowned professor from Beijing yesterday, and I was asked the same question to him, the Chinese guy. Even though we don't like them, but we don't officially reject this idea of signing a GSOMIA between Tokyo and Seoul. Because after all, it is a bilateral, two independent country decision to sign this document. And China has no freedom, no right to intervene in these two other parties signing this kind of GSOMIA.
Well, as Dr. Kim already mentioned, they aren't too happy about this because they see this as a movement, a step closer to officializing trilateral alliance between Korea, US, and Japan. But what we did by signing this deal is to made a very general agreement that we will be sharing general intelligence information case by case on reciprocal basis. And this is the kind of deal that we have already signed and about to sign with some 30 countries. And this is the kind of deal that we propose to Chinese. So I think their concern is a little bit unfounded, but we'll have to put in better efforts to allay those fears harbored by Chinese. But the bottom line, I think, is that this is something that we can do and we should be able to do, given the gravity of North Korea's threats. And this belongs to our core security interests that Chinese government will have to respect. Otherwise, Chinese government will have to do more, in terms of curbing North Korea's, appetites for these nuclear weapons and missiles. That's my take.
This will be the last question. Please briefly share your final remarks on it. As Korea and Japan have reached an agreement on military intelligence sharing pact, what kind of changes are expected to take place in the Northeast Asian diplomacy? And what more is needed for the Korean government to better deal with it?
We are quite often tempted to extrapolate from one thing to another, like signing a GSOMIA is a sure way to an aggravating relation with our relationship with Beijing. I think it's much more complicated than that. Simply signing is, as Professor Kim pointed out, just the first step. That we are willing to share information on a reciprocal way and specific information only. That means after signing a GSOMIA, we have to come more detailed documents so that we have become much more specific on the items and objectives of what we are going to, under what conditions we are going to share. China, of course, they have some worries and suspicions because they believe this is a part of the U.S. conspiracy. They're really trying to contain and China as a rising China but I think China also knows what this specific agreement stands for and what kind of implication it will have. And they are smart enough not to extrapolate or overblow this information so that they might damage our relationship, their relationship with Seoul. So as Professor Kim pointed out, we have to also make the efforts to alleviate the Chinese concern. And that's why we are willing to, and this is my understanding, as we did in the past, we went to Beijing to debrief what we were trying to do with some specific items or documents. And this is what we have done. The United States has been always debriefing any specific arrangements, either with Japan, with South Korea, to China. This is my understanding. But for political reasons, China might sometimes just block their eyes and pretend that we have no information, any debriefing from Washington. My understanding is that's not true. They know what we are trying to do with this particular GSOMIA. But I believe we have to be very concerned about our relationship. China is definitely in South Korea, and because China knows that North Korea is not willing to listen to them because for their own domestic reasons, and so they really actually proposed to us. So South Korea's request for Beijing to corner North Korea, to persuade them to give up all these, for example, like a nuclear WMD capabilities, that's very difficult. So they said, don't rely too much on China for the pressure against North Korea. This is something we have to really give a serious consideration. We have to be more independent. We have to develop our own indigenous capabilities, and also in association with the U.S. forces in South Korea.
Dr. Lee, please.
Yes. Since Dr. Kim said many important things already, I just want to simply saying that Korea, for now, I mean, at this time of kind of fluctuating situation, need to think that strategically, there is there could be let's say many ways to swim away with this let's say fluctuating or many let's say unstable situation of that of the area, but I think one of the most important things is that what we are really valuing, in a sense, there is for sure for South Korea, it is that freedom and democracy. So I think, unfortunately, in a sense, Japan has been in the area, has been the only country that Korea can share with that kind of values. So in that sense, I think if you think, let's say objectively, that it is quite fortunate that we could, both countries could have, at least as a first step to have this agreement. So I think it is quite good enough to think that way and to make that, to have that first step, I think.
Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your opinions today.